MeiMei, welcome aboard to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Ari. I'm super excited to be here.
I want to start with your book, Bend, Not Break.
All right, I co-authored that with a woman named Ping Fu. She's the CEO of one of the first 3D printing companies. She basically invented 3D printing for the actual commercial use, which was selling the technology to Invisalign, the invisible braces that
Oh, wow.
everybody wears now. Yeah.
Right,
So
right.
she's the founder of that. And it's an amazing story of her growing up in China during the Cultural Revolution, which is 66 to 76, a time of tremendous upheaval. And basically raising her younger sister from like age 10, having very little to no formal education, and making it to the US in her early 20s and starting over from scratch and building this tremendously successful tech company. It's a really cool story of resilience and inspirational tale.
How did you get together? What brought you together to write this story?
So I had already been ghostwriting and freelance editing and co-authoring for over a decade. I think when I met Ping Fu, you're never going to guess where. I could give you a million guesses and you would not guess where I met her. I met her at Burning Man
Oh, wow.
in
I would not have
full
guessed.
regalia,
I would not have guessed that, I can tell you.
costumed from head to toe in the middle of the desert in Nevada at our mutual friend Chip Connolly's birthday party. And it was there that I met her. And later she said something about wanting to write a book. And I said, oh, I would love to write that story with you. So that's how we wrote that book together.
Was this her first book?
Yeah, her first and only. Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
What are the First of all, I'm gonna say this: Bend Not Break, Ping Fu with MeiMei Fox.
Mhm.
Go get the book. Um, what are when you kind of think about writing a book? The first book is excruciating. I can I can tell you I'm writing my first book now. My 11-year-old daughter is writing her first book now. I think she's doing much better than me, honestly. It's a book of poems. What she's doing for me, it's like a tech book. It's boring, but there's a sense of fear that who the hell are you to write a book? I'm feeling it. I don't think my daughter is, but it's a common thing. Did 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 you experience that? Did Ping experience that? How do you get from who the hell am I to write a book to basically bestseller?
So I cannot tell you how often I hear this. Almost every person I've ever worked with in 30 years has had that voice in their head.
Yeah.
Almost everyone, right? And I always think of the Marianne Williamson quote, a return to love. If you don't know Marianne Williamson, she's a spiritual guru and she also ran for office in the state of California a while ago. She has this beautiful quote that's gone viral many times over the past 20 years that says, who am I to shine so brightly, be so confident, etc. And you have to ask yourself, who am I not to? This is your reason for being on planet Earth. You have something to share. And I tell people that co-authoring books, book coaching, even writing my own stuff, half of it is the writing and half of it is the psychology. And it's really true. And so I'm happy to hear you admit that. And I had it to myself so deeply within me that I had been ghostwriting and freelance editing other people's books and blogging publicly for a decade
Wow.
before I started calling myself an author. I couldn't do it. I felt like a fraud. I felt like an imposter if I was like, I'm not a writer. I'm not Ernest Hemingway. I'm not, whoever Zadie Smith. I'm just little old me. And so I really encourage you to think the exact opposite, which is every single person on this planet has a message to share. And you have at least one good book in you. And that is your message, your story. That's it, plain and simple.
Was there a moment that was salient for you that you can remember in which you were like, I can do this? Was there anything that kind of pushed you over that hump? Or was it just gradually over time?
I mean, part of it was just the darn good fortune of being thrown into the fire. which wasn't a choice. I like to say that the universe chose me. I didn't choose it because can I tell you a story of how I came to doing this career?
Our podcast is called Story Samurai.
Okay.
We
All right.
expect you to
Okay.
tell a story.
Because I'm like answering your question in a very roundabout way. So I graduated from Stanford, top of my class. I got a position at McKinsey and Company, which is a management consulting firm, very prestigious, yada, da, blah, blah, blah. I was about 3 months into that job and I was like, oops, this is not the right career for me. It was very clear to me that while I had brilliant and amazing colleagues who are incredible humans, I did not want to devote my life to making rich, powerful companies more rich and powerful.
Yeah.
And I saw out my 2 years there. I learned a ton. But at the end of the 2 years, I didn't know what to do. I had a psychology degree from Stanford. I had failed in the business world as far as I was concerned. And I was like, what do I do now? And I was just lost. And I had a friend who was a doctor who's about 15 years older than me. And he knew that I always loved to read and write. And I'd been passionate about that. And he said, hey, will you want to write a book with me? I want to write this book. It's called Sexual Fitness, which sounds really racy, but it's not. It's basically a health and wellness book with better sexual health as the hook, right? Instead of longevity or weight loss. And I was like, great, let's do it. So this is pre-Googling everything and being able to find YouTube videos that tell you how to write a book proposal. I had to go to the bookstore and buy a book called How to Write a Book Proposal. I read it cover to cover. I wrote a book proposal. I emailed it to everyone I knew. I said, does anyone know anyone in publishing who might be willing to give me some feedback? And my friend Adria wrote back. She said, my friend Nikki's at Penguin Putnam. She's offered to look at it for you. So I sent it to her. A week later, I get a message back from this woman who I've never met before. She's very junior at Penguin Putnam. And she says, we never do this. We're buying your book.
Oh, wow.
So that was it.
And
I was
Penguin
an unknown author.
is not nobody.
No, it's one of the big five.
It is.
It was a big five publishing deal from two unknown authors. And my senior editor on that book was a woman named Amy Hertz, an amazing woman. And we finished the book together. And she said, you can do this for a living. And I said, do what?
Oh, wow.
I mean, truly, I was like, I didn't even know this was a career. Did you know this was a career? I didn't know this was a career. Nobody told me this was a thing. And she's like, yeah, no, you can do this for a living. You can be a book doctor, freelance editor, co-author. And she said she gave me a literary agent. She set me up with my next book. So it was kind of like being pulled into that, as I said, like more like the universe chose me. And maybe that had something to do with why I felt like such a fraud too for so long. I didn't feel like I was legit. Even though, within 10 years, I had like 3 or 4 books that I'd worked on published by big 5 publishers.
What are the secrets to become, and this isn't just like Amazon's top list, right? This is
New York Times bestsellers.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's first of all reveal the secrets. It's not that difficult to become an Amazon top seller.
Anybody can do it, really.
Anybody can do it, and then I'll be doing it soon. So, but anybody can do it. It's simple. There's techniques to do it. Everybody teaches you the people who know how to do it will teach you how to do it. It costs a bit of money and it costs a little bit of effort, but it's easy-ish. To become a New York Times bestselling author is a whole different ballgame.
Yes.
Kind of read the audience into this that kind of doesn't get the difference and tell us what that takes. What does that mean?
Okay. Well, in order to be a New York Times bestseller, you have to be published by a traditional publishing house. So you cannot be self-published. And I have tremendous respect for self-publishing, and I encourage many of my authors to pursue that path, which we can talk about if you want. There are reasons why it's amazing. However, you can't be a New York Times bestseller without a big 5 publisher. Number 2, you cannot game the system. And you can't game the system because they change the algorithm constantly. And they go by not just how many books are sold, because if it was just how many books are sold, any CEO of a huge corporation just go buy 20,000 copies of the book, no problem, right? So it can't be that. It can't be a bulk order. It has to be placed through Amazon, through bookstores. It has to be done all over the world. They've looked geographically for geographic distribution. And so if anyone tells you, pay me 20,000 bucks and I'll guarantee you a New York Times bestseller, they are full of it. Don't believe them. It's a lie. And this is the other crazy thing. Guess how many books you have to sell to be a New York Times bestseller?
50,000?
10,000. It's
Okay.
such a tiny amount. It is such a tiny amount. But it has to be in 1 week, and it has to be from all these different sources.
Okay.
So the key to success with the New York Times bestseller is, number one, you already have a following. And this plays just exactly into what traditional publishers are looking for these days, which is aggravating to everyone who's grown up in publishing, like me, my literary agent, other publishers and agents that I know, because in the good old days, 20 years ago, if you had a great idea and you were smart and you had some credibility from your career, you might very well get a book deal. Those days are over. They look only to the size of your following. They want you to have hundreds of thousands of followers.
Sheesh.
And that's what it takes to get a book deal. Hundreds of thousands of followers, or a huge platform through some other, like you're a huge speaker, or you have an email list of tens of thousands. Then you will get a traditional book deal, because they need you to sell your own book. They don't sell your book for you. That's a total misconception people have. They think like, oh, I get a publisher and then they'll sell my book. No, they want you to sell your book. You sell your book. So this is the downside, but the upside is that you can self-publish. And when you self-publish, you own the IP. You retain 100% of the profits. Do you know how much the publishing company takes?
More than 70%.
85 to 90%.
Sheesh. So
Forever.
does this mean that all the
So,
Instagram influencers are going to start putting out
yes.
books?
Yes, it means that they get approached. They get approached by publishing houses. I just edited a woman's book where that was the case. She wasn't even thinking about writing a book. She's like a breathwork coach. She has hundreds of thousands of followers. Publisher came to her, said, hey, you need to write a book. She wrote a book. It's the opposite. It's like flipped the entire thing.
This
on
makes
its
me
head.
feel very, very uneasy. I got to tell you, I'm not loving
Okay.
it. It feels
I'm
like
sorry.
well, it's not your fault, but to a certain degree, it feels like we're following the followers as opposed to finding really interesting, insightful, great stories. And then the other side of this is, okay, now I don't know if this is a thing yet or not, but I heard now Hollywood is going after the Insta, the TikTok celebs, because for the same reason that the publishers are going after them, now Hollywood's going after them.
And the same reason that the music producers started going after them 5-10 years ago, right? Because music goes first. Music's always first. It's like music got there 5-10 years ago. They started pulling people off TikTok and producing their albums. Now books are there. And yeah, I read the same thing, that Hollywood is pulling TikTok stars into shows and stuff.
Okay, we're gonna stop talking about this before I get upset.
Okay, but because I am not a Debbie Downer, you can tell my personality, and but like I always lead with that, because I don't want people to I don't want them to deceive themselves about the reality. That said, you have tremendous potential to have a huge impact as a self-published author. You really do. 10 years ago, I wouldn't have said that. But in this world, I say that there are major authors like Seth Godin, a huge marketing guru, who choose to self-publish because they want to retain the control and the profits. And you can have a book that goes viral, and then later the traditional publisher will be banging on your door and saying, hey, we want to publish the next edition of that, So, you can't get too caught up in that world.
I want to talk about, and keep me honest if I'm pronouncing this correctly, is it basically Fortitude with Sarah
Brokaw?
Brokaw?
Mhm.
Okay, little confession here, confession time. I'm 40. Um, my wife and I have kind of come to the conclusion that, we want to live out the rest of our lives well. And we've started to ask ourselves, well, what does that mean? So what did you learn in Fortitude? What can we share with our audiences that are having a midlife crisis?
Midlife crisis. Well, Fortitude is really more primarily targeted at women. So, Aria, I'm going to break it to you. Um, but obviously, a huge consideration for women at 40 is their fertility. So, that was a big influence on me because I was 37 when I was working on Fortitude with Sarah, and Sarah was about 38. I think she's like a year or two older than me. And we were going around and interviewing all of these women. And we went to see a fertility doctor in New York, one of the preeminent fertility doctors. And this guy, Dr. Jamie Griffo. And we sit down at the table and he pulls out this chart of the statistics. And he puts it down on the table.
I know where you're going with
And
this. It's not fun.
no, I mean, I hadn't had kids yet. I got divorced when I was 32. That's a whole nother story. So I was single at the time. And it is not a gentle curve. It is an exponential curve after 38. And I was 37. And it's like your infertility goes like, you know,
Yeah.
holy moly. So that's one thing to think about. I ended up being inspired by writing that book directly led me to freezing my eggs. I went and I froze my eggs. So
Even when you're like 35, 6, 4, something ridiculously young, they call your pregnancy a geriatric pregnancy. And I'm like, go, like, what is wrong with you people? Like, why would you do that? And my wife is a doctor and she was upset by it.
for her, maybe she can help change the language on behalf of all of us women. So there's fertility. There is the midlife crisis.
Yeah.
I think it looks different. I don't know about you, Ari. I'd be curious your perspective. I
Mm,
think it looks less like the guy leaving his wife to go buy a sports car which was the trope of my era. I'm 52, like that, that of our parents' generation, that was the trope.
yeah,
I think it's less that. I think it's more really coming into connection with who you are. Carl Jung, right, that
yeah,
psychologist, says that we spend the first half of our lives figuring out, all of our stuff of just like how to deal with life and how to get through it. And then starting at age 40 is when we truly individuate and we determine like, who am I independent of my childhood and my family? And so I really thought about that a lot with Fortitude of just stepping into your power. It's a very empowering time. I love life after 40. Personally, I'm like, welcome to the better half of life, Ari. It's better over here on the other side. You have wisdom. You don't give a F. You don't.
this is true.
You're like, I don't care what other people think of me. I mean, my kids are always like, aren't you embarrassed? Like, no. you
This is
know,
true. This is true.
it's liberating. It's liberating. So that's what I think are some of the things I learned from Fortitude.
Is a midlife crisis, is this reserved for men or do women have a midlife
No,
crisis?
no, it's absolutely for women too. I mean, I think what it is a moment where you just realize, like, when you were young, people told you can be anything, you can do anything, right? And I think
Bullshit.
you hit 40, right? Yeah.
Sorry.
And you hit 40 and you really realize, like, okay, my options are limited. I got to kind of figure out, what am I doing with the rest of my life and what is the purpose? And I think it's when we start to tap very deeply into that sense of purpose. Why am I here? What is my voice? What is my legacy? My friend Chip, who's the one who introduced me to Ping Fu, Chip Connolly, he runs a place called the Modern Elder Academy. I don't know if you've heard of it, MEA. He runs retreats for middle-aged people for exactly this reason. He's inviting people to come and explore, how do I want to live intentionally and purposefully for the second half of my life?
I,
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest insights that my wife and I have had is that people are creating their own hell. And we see unhappy people, and I don't know, maybe we're being overly critical here, but we feel like it's a choice. And we feel like we've made a different choice. And to a degree that happened around 35 to 40 for us. And we started making different choices and kind of started seeing life differently. What do you, this is a difficult topic, right? Like, what's your stance on happiness? Like, how do we get there?
Well, I mean, I have very strong feelings on it because I do think that there's a biological, neurological part of the equation for some people, and I want to be
Yeah,
respectful of that. Like, there are people who are definitely struggling with, low levels of neurotransmitters, extreme trauma in their childhood, chronic pain. There are external factors. So I don't want to in any way say that that's not valid because it is, right? It's so real and it's so prevalent actually in today's world. I think that there's kind of an idea of like you have to have a floor, right? You have to have a floor to stand on. And it sounds like you and your wife are the kind of people like you have a floor. You have a good solid floor. You're like good. Kind of I feel that way with my husband too. Like we're on solid ground. So then I feel like from there is where the choice comes in. Is if you're down in the hole, if you're in the sinkhole trying to claw your way out a pit of gravel, like, somebody's got to come along and get you medication or therapy or both, or, help you, give you support to like get you out to this floor. But once you're on that base floor, it's like, do you want to go up to the higher levels and get the beautiful view? I know I sure do. And it sounds like you and your wife do. And that's where I think the choice comes in. For me, it is a daily practice. Happiness is a daily practice. I practice happiness. What do I mean by that? I start my day with a short meditation. I start my day by moving my body, even if it's just 10 minutes of yoga or a walk to school with our kids. We have a gratitude practice. We get out a piece of paper and we all write down what we're grateful for and we put it in a jar. And then when the jar fills up, we burn it in a fire pit and have a ritual around it. Like it's
I
a
love that.
very conscious and deliberate practice.
So these are two really important things, right? Exercise is something we started to do. We're walking together almost nightly. We decided that we're gonna, as a family, we're gonna do a 14er, which is ridiculous. It's 8 miles with 3,000 gain, and we have a 6-year-old,
Wow.
so that includes the 6-year-old. So we're practicing. By the way, the weakest link is me and my wife, not the kids. They're gonna rock it. Um,
Yeah.
so exercise is incredibly important. There is no lack of scientific research to show that your physical well-being as you grow older, it's just like there is thousands of researches on this topic.
But
So
that is not an overstatement whatsoever.
it's not an opinion,
Thousands.
right? This is a
It's not
fact.
an opinion. No.
There's stuff that links like your leg muscle density to brain. It's ridiculous. It's just, it never ends. The other thing is, you mentioned gratitude.
Yeah.
Here's, like, you talked about sex in the sexual wellness. Here's
Right.
my theory. I'm not an expert. I haven't done research. I think that, at least in my opinion, from my limited experience, the biggest driver of a healthy relationship is gratitude. Full stop. That's it. And the thing I told my wife, I can't believe I was this smart 30 years ago. I said, and this is very controversial, maybe. I said, I don't know that I am loving you for a lifetime. I think that love is a decision I make every day in the morning. And it's actually a decision that both of us make every day in the morning. And I can tell you one thing, I'll make that decision again tomorrow. And to me, that was a philosophical difference on how I see the world. And I get angry when I see these Disney, Hollywood books. They're trying to give us this picture of like, oh, happily ever after. Happily ever after is bullshit. So I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. What do
You are
you?
absolutely preaching the choir. I mean, sort of since I was like 12, I started hating Disney movies for that. It's like that's where the story begins.
Yes.
The story begins where the Disney movie ends. I completely agree with you. And I do feel like it all loops together with what you were saying about the choice to be happy, the choice to feel gratitude, the choice to wake up every day and say, I'm going to make this a great day. I'm going to be grateful for my family. Does it mean my kids drive me crazy? Of course they drive me crazy sometimes, but I'm so grateful for them.
Professionally.
They're so good at it.
Oh my God. It was,
My husband, like, do we have complaints about each other? Sure,
yeah.
complaints come up, but John
My wife is
Gottman.
perfect, so I don't have that problem.
Oh, I love it. Good job, Ari. Well chosen.
At least that's what I'm going to
Uh,
say while recording.
exactly. John Gottman talks about the four horsemen of the apocalypse. I'm sure you're familiar with his work about marital happiness, but he was talking about it just starts with like criticism and complaint, just plain and simple. And so just don't do that.
Are women much more susceptible to criticism than men, in your opinion?
What do you mean by that?
I feel like men are more likely to be fuck off, and women are more likely to take it to heart, and it hurts. I feel like men can kind of
Interesting.
josh and criticize with each other, and for women it's a really stupid mistake. And I'm saying this based on a sample of one, and based on mistakes that I've made myself. So I just don't know if it's a public thing that is true for more people.
I mean, that's an interesting question. I don't know the answer to that. I would say that if the stereotype is that women are more empathic by and large, then maybe they're also more sensitive. Maybe the sensitivity and greater empathy go hand in hand. But I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, so this has been so much fun. Believe it or not, we are closing on the end of our time. Yes, um, I wanna ask you this. Your kids are how old right now?
10. They're twin 10-year-old boys.
Oh wow, that opens a whole new pack of stuff. Pandora box of stuff to talk about. Um, okay, tell us one twin story. You got to give us one. Like, make
One
it a
twin
great
story,
story or a horror story, like wherever
a
you want to
horror
go.
story. Oh my God. No, I will say that we had they've been bickering a lot lately, which is like a new behavior. I mean, of course, they've always like fought over toys here and there and whatnot, but generally speaking, they're really good friends and we travel a ton. And so we drag them all over the place with us. And they have to be each other's best friends because there's no one else around. And so just the other day, like my husband and I were both getting fed up. We're like, we're going to have a family meeting about this, like bickering. I can't stand bickering. My husband and I never bicker. Okay. That's one of our rules too. Don't bicker. Do not waste your life bickering. Where it's like, I told you this. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you did. So we're going to have a family meeting and then the kids disappear. And then my husband and I we're putting the dinner on the table. We're like, where are the boys? Where are they? Like, we can't find them. They're not up front. They're not like, can't find them in the backyard. So we're like calling to them. And finally they come marching in. We're like, where have you been? They said, we went to our secret place. And we're like, what's your secret place? And I'm like, well, our secret place is where we're going to go when we're fighting with each other or when we're upset with each other. And Z is going to say, I feel like punching you in the neck. And the other guy's going to say, I feel like crushing your skull. And then we're going to go to our secret happy place. And we are going to play we have a whole bunch of games there. We have tennis and we have golf and we have soccer ball. And we're going to play a game and we're going to hug each other and we're going to drink some water and everything's going to be okay.
So how do your kids have the emotional intelligence that many 40-year-olds don't have?
That's what I said to them, Corey. I was like, can you like just do that all again and I'm going to record that because where did that even come from? Amazing. So that's an amazing twin story.
I love it. So okay, I got a few more before I wrap up.
Aw.
You're thinking about the future of your kids. You're a Stanford grad. You went to the place where everybody looks like a drug addict, McKinsey. That's how you recognize them, by the red around. This is probably a
Oh my
joke
God,
that
I love that.
that
That's awesome. I've never heard that before.
no, but it's so obvious.
Never.
Like, if they're exhausted, they're tired, they're working their ass off. They're never going to win the lottery. You know what I mean. But most of them, at least. So When you think about the future of your boys, what do you tell them? What do you point them towards? What do you teach them? Is it just like be happy, whatever? Or do you want them to a certain degree on this ambitious Stanford, McKinsey, whatever the version of it is for them?
I mean, first of all, I think AI is changing everything
Yeah.
radically to a level that we can't even conceive. And I think even the idea of Stanford or school, I think my prediction is there will be a percentage of the population for whom that's still very valuable, but more and more that's going to become irrelevant,
Yeah.
right? Like, I mean, I've already seen that happen. I mean, as I told you, I'm 52. So I graduated 30 years ago, and I'm part of this group called Summit Series. I don't know if you've heard of them. They throw amazing events for young entrepreneurs. Half of them didn't go to college. Half of them didn't go to college, right? And that's already. So that's number one. And then, so basically, what we encourage, I don't know about you, Ari, I'd love to hear what you encourage, is number one is effort. Like, pick a thing and put effort into it. I want to see you, if it's soccer, which it is for them right now, like, I want to see you take falls and get hurt. If it's school, great, let it be school, but then go for it. If it's art, let it be art,
Yeah.
but it's effort. And number two is creativity. Like, we have a creative family, and I just think more and more in this world as AI can do more and more of the things it can code, it can do, it's like the thinking big about problems, issues, communicating.
Almost identical. So we call this a fat ass. I want them to have a fat ass. They can sit down and just work for hours. So every single one of my kids at age 6 will do math for 6 to 7, 8 hours straight, right? They're all like a couple grades above their grade in math. They're all GT. So that's what we call a fat ass, right? That you can just sit down and not move. And that's the effort aspect of it. We don't call it creativity, but for me, it's about decision making. Maybe it's slightly different. And for me, it's like, look, I don't know what your life's going to be. I don't know what's going to be ahead of you. I don't know what the decisions are going to be, but I want to give you the tools and techniques to make smart decisions. And that, I forced my daughter, and it's coming to my son, to read Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And to me, that book is the father of many sciences that came after it, like Richard Thaler's nudge, like the decision-making sciences. If you can understand the social psychology behind cognitive biases and such, then it's the
Yep.
foundation. And she was 10 when she started this, and she was crying like, Daddy, you're forcing me to study grad school level psychology. What's wrong with you? A lot of stink eye, a lot of side eye. But now she's using framing and biases and anchoring and inversion effects on me. And I'm like, don't do that. Stop that.
That's
No.
amazing.
So she's like, so she's like, oh, Daddy, remember when we had this night and then you made pop? Are you framing me, woman?
That's
So be careful.
fantastic.
First of all, be careful what you teach your children. They will use it against you.
Oh, for sure. You're target number one.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you greatly. What's your angle on creativity? How do you get there? Like at high level, I think everybody gets it, but how do you teach or empower or bring out the creativity in your children?
I mean, for children, I think they have it in abundance. It's what you're talking about. Like, they're not the ones going around saying, "Who am I to write a book?" They're not saying that.
No.
They're not saying, "Who am I to do art?" And they're not drawing their art and being like, "This sucks," ever, at the beginning anyway, in the early days. So I think it's more just, reinforcing like experimentation, play, having fun, failing, right? I mean, that to me is really the essence of not teaching creativity, but teaching, if you are going to go on that path that you have, obviously you're an entrepreneur, um, and that I have, like, it's so I like your framing of it with decision making as a part of that. And it's looking at the bigger picture. It's this bigger picture thinking, right? Because for me, a huge part of creativity is it's not like how well can you draw something. It's connecting disparate ideas, like drawing from, oh, I read this one thing
Yeah,
in the New York Times, and then and then I saw this work of art, and I'm connecting them.
yeah. Cross pollination. The
Yeah.
the if you haven't read it, this is a great one. I've mentioned Daniel Kahneman so many times. This is one I haven't mentioned. The 10 Faces of Innovation. Delightful book. It talks about 10 different types of innovation. It comes from the Idaho company, which is basically like one of the most, I think, one of the most brilliant design companies in the world ever. But
Really?
if you or our audience hasn't read that book, I love it. It's just such a delight. They talk about reinventing like a supermarket carts and stuff like that. It's great.
Oof. By
What
the way, I took a psych class from Tversky when I was at
really?
Stanford. That was a highlight of my undergraduate career. Truly, it was. It was. It
Oh,
was
I
like I
can
was being
imagine.
taught by a Nobel laureate, and it was called Decision Making and Judgment.
Oh,
That was the
wow.
course. And it had a huge impact on me. Not all courses did. I mean, some of them were very fascinating, but the thing that had a huge impact on me was every economist has built all these models for how things work.
Yeah.
The problem is they're based on human beings acting rationally.
Yes. Irrational rationality.
So, so
So the his
yeah,
partner in crime, Danny,
yeah,
or
yeah,
Daniel,
right.
he actually wrote the filtering tests for the Israeli military, and something like 40 years after, they were like, oh, we're going to redo this, we're going to change this. And he did this when the country was basically formed, when the military was formed, and they came back, they tried to change it, they couldn't. It was just the best thing that they
The
could do,
best.
and they couldn't get anything better. They could not improve on what this nobody, who was not yet like all that, did, what, 30, 40 years before. Can you imagine that?
No, I can't imagine that.
uh,
That's an amazing story.
okay, so if you had to go back to 20-something-year-old MeiMei, and this is a difficult question because it's very personal, what would you tell 20-something-year-old MeiMei?
I mean, truly, it would be to believe in myself more, step into my power sooner, own it all. I sit and I watch these youngsters in Summit when I'm there, and I'm the old lady at 50, and they're in their like they're 20 somethings, and they're just like firecrackers, and they're just doing it. And I just think like, oh my God, I could have just been doing it this whole time instead of slowly, silently creeping along my way. But, that's my path. That's my journey. I got here when I got here.
MeiMei, thank you so much for joining our show today. This has been an absolute delight.
So fun talking to you, Ari. I've come back anytime.
We'll do that. We will do that.
Okay.